This is a piece of steel from a hotel lobby in Kansas City. Investigators wrote 9UE on it in marker because that is where the collapse started. 2 walkways came down into that lobby on a Friday evening in 1981. 113 people died. You have probably heard why. During construction, a drawing was changed. Almost every telling of this story stops there. And the report does say it. Conclusion 6. Now read the next one. It is one line further down the same page. Conclusion 7. The connection would not have satisfied the building code under the original detail either. The drawing that was replaced was already short of the code. The change made a failing connection worse. The Bureau put numbers on both halves. The connection that failed was carrying 31% of what the code expected it to hold. Without the change, it would have been about 60%. Better, still not enough. Start with the evening. The hotel had been open about a year. Its atrium was a room roughly 117 feet by 145 and 50 feet high. 3 walkways crossed that open space at the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors, hanging from the roof framing. On Friday, the 17th of July, the hotel was holding a tea dance. People began arriving at 3 in the afternoon. By 4:30, the floor seating was full, and people began to gather on the walkways to watch. By 7, the crowd in the atrium was estimated at 1,500 to 2,000. Here is the next minute, as the Bureau recorded it. 7:04. The band returns from break and begins to play for the dance contest. 7:05. 2nd and 4th floor walkways collapse. The 4th floor walkway fell onto the 2nd floor walkway, and both landed on the lobby floor. Most of those killed were on the lobby floor or on the walkway below. The first call for help reached the fire department 3 minutes later. 7 ambulances were on scene by 18 minutes past. Within an hour, there were more than 100 firefighters and emergency workers in the lobby, and a call had gone out for cutting tools. The walkway spans were too heavy to lift by hand. A crane arrived at 8:30 and was moved into position inside the atrium. The last survivor was pulled out at 4:30 the next morning. The last span was lifted at 7:45 that morning. 31 bodies were underneath it. So what was the change? As approved for construction, the drawings called for one continuous rod. It attached to the roof, passed through the 4th floor beam, and carried on down to the 2nd floor beam. Follow the weight. The 2nd floor hangs on that rod, and its load travels up past the 4th floor beam without ever resting on it. What was actually built used 2 sets of rods, one from the roof down to the 4th floor beam, a separate one hanging from that same beam down to the 2nd floor. Now the lower walkway does not hang from the roof anymore. It hangs from the walkway above it, which means everything below has to pass through the 4th floor connection on its way up, both walkways, through one nut. That is what the Bureau meant by essentially doubled. And nothing about that is obvious from a drawing. The pieces look almost the same. What changed is invisible. It is the path the weight takes. None of this happened quietly. The change appears on shop drawings, prepared during construction by the steel fabricator. And the report notes who signed off on them. 3 parties looked at the drawing that doubled the load and stamped it. Now the half of the story that usually gets left out. The Bureau listed 2 contributing factors, not 1, and it put them in this order. Inadequacy of the original design comes first. And note the clause after it. That design was identical for all 3 walkways. Which leads to a sentence that is easy to read past. Conclusion 5. As constructed, the box beam connections, the 4th floor hanger rods, and the 3rd floor walkway hanger rods did not satisfy the building code. The 3rd floor walkway did not fall. It was never part of the collapse, and it was also below code. To be fair to the drawing that was replaced, the Bureau also said this. Conclusion 8. So both things are true. The original design would have held that night, and the original design was already below the code that was supposed to keep it standing on every other night. The failure itself took almost no time at all. A box beam was 2 steel channels, 8 inches deep, laid facing each other and welded along the seam where their edges met. The rod passed through a hole drilled in that box, and a nut and washer underneath held the whole walkway up, which puts the entire load onto the strip of weld running between those two channels. The Bureau found the rods had pulled through both flanges of every box beam in the fourth-floor walkway. The flanges bent upward, the steel yielded along the fillet line, and the weld fractured back past the rod hole, and the scraping on the metal showed the washer had not gone through in one motion. It slipped, caught, and slipped again. The Bureau could not single out one weak connection, and said so. It could say where the failure started, from how the steel was bent. Observed distortions strongly suggest the failure initiated at the connection on the east end of the fourth-floor walkway's middle box beam. It is worth saying how any of this was established. The city asked the Bureau of Standards for help 3 days after the collapse. Its researchers arrived on the 21st of July, and at first they were not allowed to touch anything. To weigh the spans and to cut pieces out of the box beams and rods for testing, the Bureau had to ask a court. Permission came only after the parties suing each other agreed. The wreckage was evidence before it was ever a specimen. Once they had the steel, the Bureau built mock-ups of the connection and pulled them apart in the laboratory. Cutting the test welds open showed how little of the seam the weld had actually reached into. One thing the tests ruled out, and it matters. Nobody welded it badly. Nobody supplied bad steel. It was built more or less the way the shop drawing said to build it. One more number, and it is the one that stays with me. A television crew had been filming the dance. From that videotape, the Bureau counted the people who were standing on the two walkways. 63 people, that was the load. The walkways themselves weighed about 8% more than the drawings implied. That was the only other surprise, which produced the Bureau's first conclusion, and then the sentence the whole report is really built around. With this change, the capacity was so reduced that from the day of construction the walkways had only minimal capacity to resist their own weight, and virtually none to resist the loads imposed by people. From the day of construction, not from the night of the dance. The hotel had been open for about a year before anyone stood on those walkways in numbers. A word about what this report is, because it is easy to read it wrong. The Bureau of Standards was asked by the city to determine the most probable cause. It is a technical finding. It does not assign fault, and it names no one. We have made 5 of these now. A ship went over because a man typed a wrong number. One because the number in the book was wrong. A boat sank because a warning was written and declined. A pipeline burst because the record described a pipe that was never there. This one is different again. The drawing was changed, and the change was reviewed and stamped and built. What nobody did was work out what it now had to carry. And underneath that, the thing almost nobody repeats. The drawing they replaced would not have passed either.